Hi, I'm Genevieve and welcome to Vive Living, and today we're filming from my home in Sotogrande and we are with Joanna Mobley. Joanna, welcome.
Hi Genevieve, thanks for having me.
Joanna, there's so many things I want to ask you about because I know you have had a really amazing corporate career. You have, you're the founder of Polo Women,
That's right,
which
yeah,
is
here.
also really quite an incredible brand in this part of Spain. And you have been doing lots of other very interesting things to find yourself. And you are really the epitome of what Vive Living wants to share.
That's a big compliment, thank
no,
you
but
very
you are,
much.
because you're so inspiring and you do so many different things. And it's really, we were talking before, and I really think Vive Living is about vitality, about life, about us inspiring other women. You know, when you think that you're just taking a dip, just rise from the ashes and start again. And I know a bit of your story, Joanna. I've known you a little while now, and you've done that in quite a big way, quite a few times.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your corporate career?
Yes, well, I guess to start with, you kind of get to your personality drives what you do in life a lot, and that's formed very much, in your childhood. And I think growing up in the middle of England, I always wanted to get out and explore the world and see more. And I found a way to, at the age of 17, get a scholarship and go to the US. And I managed to go there on my own. I'd never been to America before. I knew nobody. And I turned up in Boston. And I was the only one in my family ever to go to university. And I passed through university. Wanted to have a life more than being in England, and so I got myself on the corporate ladder with a Bachelor of Arts, and I worked through my first job, which was actually in the early days was in Birmingham, not so illustrious, but somehow Coca-Cola, as you know, found me, and they headhunted me and asked me to go and work for them in Vienna. So my international career really started when I moved to Vienna, and I took on a European role with them. And then I spent several years with Coca-Cola and essentially traveled the world. So I worked for them in Vienna, I worked for them in the UK, I worked for them in China and in Hong Kong, and obviously got an incredible corporate experience through doing that, all in marketing roles in different positions. And from there I worked with companies like Danone, running beverages for them in Asia, and then from there I was picked for a global role and worked with Saab Miller, running their innovation globally, and then I eventually ended up in New Zealand, and there I was involved in the dairy business, where I ran innovation and marketing for the biggest dairy company in the world. And I know you talk a lot about women, and so in that role I was one of the most senior women in New Zealand, and I had many people that were working with me to promote dairy and dairy consumption in many different formats, from cheese and proteins to ice cream through the world. So I traveled the world in this sort of big corporate responsibility.
You also had a financial ambition as well, Joanna, didn't you?
So my financial ambition was that, well, the whole principle was that if you work very hard, you will get what you want in life, right? That's what we were taught. Work hard, keep your head down, only come up to breathe if you have to, which is a few holidays now and then. But work hard and your dreams will come true. So that's essentially what I did. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to be what they call the dollar millionairis by the age of 40. So I was approached about a role to head up banking, wealth management marketing for a big Swiss bank, which was called UBS. And I took on the role, and this is where fate decided this was not this was not what life had in store for me, to lead that life or have that approach. And the day that I signed my contract to be in this big role, it was the Lehman Brothers crashed and the financial crisis started. So from that moment I went from having a very large role to a very small role, and my time was taken with
Firefighting.
Firefighting, and unfortunately the very difficult task of making people redundant. So I had to from starting with about 50 people in my team, I had to make 45 people redundant, and it was a very difficult time for me, and also to see the sadness that situation brought to so many people's lives. I wanted to take myself out of that role and do something different, which is why I took an opportunity and I went to New Zealand and wanted to lead actually a completely opposite type of life, in that, you know, going to New Zealand, things are very different from Europe. So
And you went with your kids as well, didn't you?
So yeah, so again, things happen for a reason. So the financial crisis hit. There was an opportunity to kind of almost eject myself out of that scenario and take a risk and go to the other side of the world, which is what I did. And at the same time, I had my son had just been born, and he was 5 months old, and my heart said I needed to take this opportunity and go, and I needed to go with my children. So I went with my 5-month-old, my daughter, and so it was just the three of us that went there.
Talk about breaking boundaries. You broke the boundary of your family,
yes,
to be the first one to go to university and start into a corporate career. That's already in those times breaking boundaries as a woman.
Yes.
Working for FMCG companies and having and holding quite senior roles. I mean, that's quite corporate trailblazing, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what I'd call it.
Yes. Well, at the time you don't really think about these things. You just do it. You follow what your heart and your brain tells you to do. Yeah. And again, I think at the time the way that we were brought up was to, if there's seize an opportunity. So it was very much about seizing opportunities, and it wasn't so much about where you wanted to be. It was if an opportunity came your way, you said yes. You never say no.
Got to grab it in both hands and go for it.
It's more difficult to say no than say yes. And so I just kept saying yes.
But what a challenge with a 5-month-old baby and your daughter.
Yes.
That
was hard.
Completely on the other side of the world.
Yes.
With a big corporate responsibility as well.
That's right.
And you flourished in that role, didn't you?
Yeah, that was something I enjoyed a lot, and the role and the company did very well. And at the time, again, it didn't feel so difficult because the learning curve was very steep. So you learn a lot. When you've got very young children, it's more easy because the children aren't so aware of everything that's happening around them. And with a 5-month-old, it's easier, you know, and a 2-year-old it was easier. So it'd be more difficult now. They're grown up, but I loved it. They had a wonderful time in New Zealand, and it's a very different way of living. New Zealand's a place that's very humble. They have a concept called a saying in New Zealand, which is around it's called the tall poppy syndrome, and it means that in anywhere you are in life, in any corporate role or in life in general, the New Zealand people don't want to be the tall poppy, which means they don't want to raise their head above the others. And so everyone stays very humble. And so the way you are in your business, the way you are in public, the way you are in the evenings, is that everyone tries to be more together as one rather than show off or be different.
It's more of a collective society.
Much more a community-oriented society. So it was very different, and it was a great way to enter into a new country and feel that, you know, people were ready to kind of embrace you and have you as part of their family and their way of life, which is why, you know, and New Zealand, it's very much like that. It's not materialistic, it's very humble. It's very simple, very family oriented, very natural. We spent most of our weekends on the beach or exploring the countryside, you know, in Hawke's Bay, or going down to the south of the North Island, or going to the South Island and lakes and volcanoes and, you know, everything you can imagine. So very
probably
different.
what you need for the balance of heading a big
That's
corporate
right.
role and managing on your own
That's right.
your young family as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was the good, the fire in the water.
Yeah. So I think life kind of gave you a bit of what you needed at
That's
that time,
right.
didn't it?
That's
but
right.
it is pretty inspirational still to
Yes.
move to the other side of the world
Yes.
and still stay in the corporate world and manage a family.
And I think it's funny that that time, that's actually what put me back to where I wanted to be. It was like the door opening to where I really wanted to be, was because when I was in New Zealand, I got back in touch with the horses. And like you say, like at the weekends, I used to go anywhere that had horses. I'd go knock on a door and see if I could ride a horse, until I found people that I stumbled across people that played polo in their fields.
Okay.
And anything with a stick and a ball I like, and obviously I grew up with horses, so that kind of put me back in touch with who I really was, as opposed to this path I was on to find myself.
Wow.
So it put me back in touch with what I wanted how I wanted to live, which was to be around horses, to work hard, but essentially to do something with nature and be with horses.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of started to help me close the loop a little bit.
You stay tuned for part 2. We're going to hear all about Joanna and how she started Polo for Women in Sotogrande.